Oh man, I forgot something. 1 second. I'll fix it. '30 will become 32. We're going to talk about NBA expansion on the NBA Economy Show. Hello, this is Fritz, and welcome to the NBA Economy Show. And today we're going to be talking about expansion with my friend Lee Escobedo. Welcome to the show.
Fritz, man, great to be here. Anytime I get an invitation from you, I jump on it. You're one of the people that I respect the most when it comes to talking hoops.
Yeah, so could you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
You bet. I write about the NBA for Bleacher Report, the WNBA for Bleacher Report, general NBA insider tips for Yardbarker, and I am a regular columnist for The Guardian and The Nation on the intersectionality between politics, society, and sports. And for fun, I also write about contemporary art and restaurants for Michelin Guide, The Infatuation, Art Forum, and various other publications.
Yeah, that's great. And let me get the screen set up. All right. So expansion in the NBA. Do you think it's like a positive thing or a negative thing?
I think it's a positive thing. I've been of the persuasion that we are in the this current NBA epoch is the most talented that the league has ever been, and that's because of a combination of an influx of overseas players playing in very highly developmentally sound leagues that then come to the NBA, as well as the NBA lower increasing the age limitations to have at least 1 year of college. I think that makes players come into the league with more of a pronounced skill set and stronger fundamentals, as well as the AAU and high school pipeline, which is producing NBA players at record numbers from states such as Florida, Texas, California, Illinois, and Georgia.
Yeah. So there's as the population grows, um, there's a lot of great cities in the United States. There's room for 32 cities instead of 30. The
Certainly.
same as there was room for 28, and then there was room for 26. So it like we're I think there's a way enough talent to spread around that the product wouldn't necessarily be diminished. What do you say about those people who think the product would be diminished by adding two teams?
Yeah, that's why I made that initial argument about kind of talking about what has increased the talent gap in the NBA to a place we've never seen before. It that then allots for more teams so that there's more parity across the league, but also more opportunity. We have so many great players that are right now not in the NBA and are not being tendered a contract that would be starters if this was 20 years ago in 2006. That's how great the NBA has become. And you can see that by the metrics of 3 point shooting, by offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating, and just the overall eye test. Watch any team on any given night, even some of the bad ones like Washington or Miami or Utah, and you'll see that, wow, even the eighth, ninth guy could be a starter 20 years ago in the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so the NBA has been talking expansion for a long time. This isn't. I know the last couple of years it's been very loud, where the NBA has actually acknowledged that they're doing it, but they've been talking it for a long time. For a while, they were talking even overseas in the actual NBA. They were talking about, hey, we could fly over to London, we could
Right.
fly over to whatever, and we've seen that overseas they're going to have their own league. Um, but there's been cities such as like Mexico City being mentioned. Um, Nashville has been mentioned. Um, and they ultimately came to the looks like the last two, Vegas and Seattle. What sticks out about those two cities to you?
I don't think Seattle should have ever lost their team to begin with. If you read the great nonfiction piece Boomtown, it chronicles how the team was moved from Seattle to OKC based on the owner, the owner then of the Seattle Supersonics, sold a team to oil people in OKC because the city of Seattle was not willing to foot the bill for a new arena. So it became up for sale, and an OKC owner bought it with the promise. The two owners had to have a handshake deal promise that the OKC owner would keep the franchise in Seattle, which he agreed to. Obviously, once power was transferred, who keeps their promise in America anymore? So obviously he started pushing it to get relocated to where they are, where now they're the OKC Thunder, and the entire history of the Seattle Supersonics went with them. If there are two cities in this country that couldn't be more different, it's the city of OKC and the city of Seattle, and just about every possible for parameter. You have different makeups, and so their fan bases are also extremely different too. And I don't think that either team should be conflated with the other in terms of their history. Both teams have now won a championship. Seattle in the late '70s, OKC last year. I think they also deserve their own separate history as well. And from what I've read, all of Seattle's statistical history and legendary history and Hall of Fame history would go back to that franchise, and then OKC would just be on its own autonomy, which I think is the right move. And I'm glad to see basketball back in Seattle. They're a pretty fervent fan base. Every Seattle fan I've ever met is still reminiscing, wearing jerseys, and having merch in their house. And I know a few of them because they marry into my family, and they're diehards, and they deserve to have their hoops team back. And I'm glad we're going to see it. Plus, their jerseys are some of the sickest in NBA history. Every single design was an absolute banger. I don't think they even had a bad uniform, so I'm happy to see those back in the streets, out in the wild. And then Vegas made a lot of sense too. I think that's a team that has a lot of transient people coming in from time to time that have a lot of money, a lot of disposable income. I don't think they'll ever be hard up for the stadium being filled. What I do think would be interesting, though, is merch sales. I would imagine they would have some of the lowest merch sales in the NBA unless they get an absolute LeBron level player that just generates a lot of eyes on TV and eyes on the court. I don't know how they would have kind of more of the internal organic fans that are buying merch and jerseys, so on and so forth. I think it's going to be more of like a destination city. When you fly into Vegas to do business or to have pleasure, you're also going to fit in a Las Vegas basketball game into your itinerary.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are two different cities. One legacy city, one new city. In Vegas, because we've seen the sports team has been pouring in over the last few years, like NFL, MLB,
Right.
um, hockey. So this is kind of like a natural evolution. It's one of the like fastest growing cities in America. So this is like a natural evolution. Um, there has been people talking about perhaps not adding two teams, but maybe taking an existing team and putting in one of those two cities. Do you feel like the 30 cities that we currently have should are NBA level cities? Uh,
No. The two teams I've heard that would be relocated are the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizzlies. And people in the know that I'm friends with in the journalism world, not Knicks journalists, but NBA level journalists, are telling me the most likely one is Minnesota. That Minnesota would be relocated to Las Vegas, and I'm perfectly fine with that. This is no denigration to anyone's fan base. Obviously, I've given props to both the OKC fans and the Seattle fans, two of the best fan bases in NBA history. Even though one is very small and then one is very, you don't think sports when you think Seattle. But
mhm.
Memphis and Minnesota, I think, are ripe for a new relocation. Neither team has a championship in their short history. Both teams are also recently new. I can't exactly remember when Minnesota became a team, but I think it was sometime in the '90s. And I know for sure that Vancouver did not become a team until the early '90s before relocating after only 3 or 4 seasons to Memphis. So you're not ripping out 50, 60 years of a homegrown fan base. At the most, it's going to be about a 30-year fan base. And I think if a time comes around again for there to be a team, we would then be looking again maybe 10, 15 years from now with one of those two teams having an NBA franchise again. But I think that there's more equity and money for the NBA in Vegas than it is Minnesota or Memphis.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've really looked at Memphis, not necessarily going to one of these two cities, but Memphis actually going to Nashville. Um, we'll see. And it's not really, you know, how much money it generates, but also the amount of players who also like speak about the safety and like the actual like crime stats of those cities. I think is probably more concerning than like how many jersey sales or how much money it's bringing in. Because I like the NBA players like very openly say they don't like Memphis and they don't go out in the city of Memphis, and I think that's probably a bigger issue than the money issue. Um,
I mean, I wasn't going to mention that. I'm glad you did because it gives me an opportunity to have another thing that I wasn't going to mention, but now that you did, to as a counterpoint, I agree with that. Obviously, no one's going to argue that Memphis is not a crime riddled city, and also that Minnesota was kind of the political epicenter of current American unrest during the Donald Trump's first year with the ICE murders of American citizens on the street. But and again George Floyd as well in 2020. But I would also argue that it does hurt stripping out a a team that a community can rally around, especially ones that are as poverty stricken and violence stricken as a city like Memphis, a great American city, a city where rhythm and blues and African American culture, African American country music came out of, African American rhythm and blues and jazz came out of, and rock and roll came out of. I hate when a huge lifeline of identity and shared community is removed from a city because typically what fills it is more violence, destitution, and poverty. So that would be my only argument about doing that. But I know that the NBA, as a pretend social justice corporation, doesn't give two damns about those implications. They only care about the bottom line. And also, I think it's important that when you rip that out, you're also removing jobs from that area too. And if there's one thing that you can kind of bank on in terms of an industry that's not going to be put out or erased or minimized by AI and other future technology advancements, it's working at a stadium and doing manual labor, whether that's someone that drives in traffic into the parking arena, or someone who is security, or someone who is selling burgers and fries, or someone who addresses people through their seats. Those are roles that allow for human to human interaction and gives people a sense of pride. They're not just working for some faceless, nameless corporate oligarch, but they're working for a team that they also go home and watch on their TV set. That to me, I think that is such a lifeline of identity and personal significance that I think it would be sad and in some ways a great tragedy to remove that from the city of Memphis.
yeah, in many ways, it would be abandoning the city because the city to revitalize the city, you need something to rally around. You need something. You need the money coming in, and it would leave it left worse off than when you were there. Um,
100%.
yeah, so it's one of those tricky things. I'm not sure what the NBA is going to do about that. I don't think that has anything to do about this current round of expansion. But in the future, I'm not sure what's going on with Memphis.
Yep.
Um, so when it comes, do you remember any of the previous expansions, or was
Um,
into like basketball at the time? Uh,
yeah, I was. I was there for the Charlotte Hornets going from New Orleans to Charlotte when Michael Jordan bought the team, and they kind of had a succession series of great draft pick opportunities, and they squandered them around Sean May and Adam Morrison. So I was there for that. I was also around for Vancouver's relocation to Memphis, and the pretty fun teams that Hubie Brown was coaching after that relocation. And Mike Bibby and Jason Williams switched, and Memphis became very fun to watch, run and gun style. and then the most recent new additions where they brought back a franchise to damn it, New Orleans, and then also the was it Toronto Rap? No, the relocation of the Nets from New Jersey to Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, I do remember all the way back to. I do remember like the Heat. I do remember Charlotte, um, Minnesota, and I think a lot of times fans misremember. I think they kind of forget the first couple years and kind of in their mind skip to like a couple years down the line. So a lot of times when people are talking about the expansion, um, these two teams um, usually don't start out with a lot of talent. Um, don't usually start with the talent. The NBA doesn't make these teams start with a G League team and work their way up. So what they have is the expansion draft. So the expansion draft, they're able to get players from current NBA teams to begin, you know, their NBA teams. Um, Currently, just a thought. It hasn't been solidified, but it would be starting in 28, 29. So that summer of 28, 29, um, they would be doing an expansion draft. And I think a lot of people are, putting out fear is, hey, my team may lose its best player to an expansion franchise. And typically that's not the case. Like, um, they don't usually want the huge salaries from a superstar, and usually those players are protected. I think there are some differences from this expansion and previous expansions that we will get into that will make it very interesting. Um, but I'm just gonna show you the previous expansion draft. Oh, 1 second.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I think in the history of NBA expansion,
Hmm.
and when players are chosen from the other however many teams there are at that time in the NBA, the best player ever selected was when Charlotte took Gerald Wallace from the Sacramento Kings, and he ended up evolving into their number one option and a All Star on that team. To my knowledge, I don't think there's ever been a better expansion player selected than him, and he was like the seventh, eighth man on Sacramento Kings when the teams were pretty good. He joined as a rookie when they were championship contenders, and then he became a first option All Star on the Charlotte Bobcats at the time.
Yeah. So our I'm just gonna bring up the last two expansion drafts that we had. So the NBA expanded two teams at a time in 1989, in 1995, and there aren't a lot of like big names in these, and the reason is you don't want you don't want a franchise player um in an expansion draft because, like, even now you want to build through the draft, so you don't want anything that's extremely long, like extremely long salary. What you'll see on these rosters is that a lot of older players were picked. um Small role players were picked, and it's a good starting point. The better names on these, um BJ Armstrong, who wasn't necessarily in his prime. um
Yeah, I'm looking here, and the names that are popping out to me is right Scott Styles, who is actually taking at 11. That's a pretty good deal for them. Rick Mahorn, obviously of the Detroit Piston fame, as well as Dallas Maverick fame. Greg Anthony, former Knick, looks like that's who was taken from the Knicks in that deal, was where he was sent to Vancouver to start that franchise. Gerald Wilkins was older. Byron Stott was older. Tony Massenberg, a pretty good option there as well. He was eventually, I think, playing for the Vancouver Grizzlies at one point in time as well. Jerome Kersey, also another solid vet. So yeah, there's John Sally. We know him from the Lakers championship years and Chicago. So there are some
Mhm.
guys that are recognizable, but I agree with you. There's no one that's like franchise moving.
Yeah. Yeah, and the difference between that and what I expect for this time around is trades is going to be a um bigger part of expansion. Because I believe this time they're going to allow trades. Um so unlike other years with the new CBA, their team's actually wanting to get out of contracts instead of just wanting to keep contracts. So
Yep,
one of the
I'm
big
glad you brought that up.
wrinkles one of the big wrinkles this time is maybe you may have a pretty good player leaving because that team wants them to leave. Say, hey,
And
yeah,
I would say, and that the CBA requires you to meet a certain financial threshold. So you do need some of those larger contracts to eat up large slices of the financial pie.
yeah, yeah, and even in these older drafts, um, a lot of teams did not protect some of their better players. It like if you had a long contract, a large contract, some of those players were exposed because they knew they weren't going to take them because they knew they didn't want long contracts. Some of these players, if you're gonna be on a bad team, you don't want these huge salaries. So the players you protect aren't necessarily your eight best players. Um, yeah, you
I
usually want to, yeah,
I
yeah.
came with some research, Fritz, because I wanted to bring some heat to your episode because to those watching, I don't think there's anyone that supports me in my writing more than Fritz does. Every single thing I share, he has a post and retweets it, and it means a lot to me. So I went ahead and did some research, and I pulled every player that I think would be taken from each team, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and then I wanted to ask an ultimate question: would this team make the playoffs? I think in the West, obviously, the answer is no. But the East can sometimes have a bigger discrepancy between the top four teams' record and the bottom four team record. Even though the East is very competitive, I do think typically that it's less competition 1 through 8 than the West in terms of standings and records. So if you want me to, I can read off some of these names. And again, for the audience, I don't think we mentioned it. The top eight players are protected. Now, the team themselves make that discrepancy. They choose who the top 8 ones are, not the NBA. And then whoever else is outside that top 8 bubble can be allowed to be taken. Each team can only have one player taken in the two drafts. So if they do two teams and the Knicks have someone taken from the first Las Vegas team, Seattle then can't come and steal somebody else. A one player can only be taken once from a team. So a couple of the ones I mentioned, I'll mention the one I'm sure most people are the most interested in, which is a New York Knicks. I thought that Tyler Kolek would be the one selected. You get a starter level, in my opinion, guard about above. I would say he's average. I wouldn't say he's above average, but he's starter level because of his playmaking and passing ability. And I think the Knicks would protect their starting five along with Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride, and Mohamed Diawara. Those are the three that I thought they would keep, which would then allow for a Landry Shamet or Pacome Dadier, Ariel Hutporty, Jordan Clarkson type guy to be selected. But I think the one who had the highest upside and the one that a young team like Las Vegas or Seattle will be interested in is Tyler Kolek. So Tyler Kolek would then be taken from the New York Knicks and a couple other ones of higher significance that I think would be nabbed. A team like the Pistons, who's really deep. I think they're solid. They have a third best center in the NBA in terms of third string and Paul Reed. I think Paul Reed would probably be selected from there. Where if you look at a team that's completely rebuilding, Memphis would probably want to get off that brand new contract that gave Ty Jerome. So you'd see Ty Jerome selected from them. The Magic, a really deep team with a lot of talent. They have a Gillette Dwayne, so maybe a Tristan Da Silva could be selected there. Where in a different capacity, you have the Portland Trailblazers who are up and coming, but there's one contract that definitely stands out as not on the same timeline, and that's Jeremiah Grant. So that could be one of those contracts that's taken, maybe even like a Paul George on the 76ers that's allowed to be available, even though they don't fit the criteria of either underwhelming or underdeveloped or low ceiling. They're a guy who can put some butts in the seats and eyes on the tube because they also would average 25 points a game and maybe the 1 or 2 seasons they play. But other teams like Atlanta, maybe a Corey Kispert, the Celtics, Luka Garza, Denver, Tim Hardaway, Miami, Davion Mitchell, and OKC, Wiggins. Those are some guys that I think would make up a roster. So I started thinking about that. Then I went to Toronto and I was like, I think Jeremy Podol would be selected. I think Colin Murray Boyles is too good. Sheed is too good. I think that the 8 guys they would cover, I think Podol would be available. So then I started thinking, Fritz. I was at a starting 5 of like Tyler Kolek, Davion Mitchell, right? Jeremiah Grant, maybe Ty Jerome, and Podol. I think that can make the playoffs in the East as a play-in team. The West, no. But in the East, I think the first year they could compete for that 10th seed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the current rules and just the CBA climate makes this team more likely to make the playoffs than any of the previous
Yep.
expansion teams. I think in previous years, the talent was the key first. Like now, salary is salary, contract status, that type of thing is starting to become a bigger priority rather than talent. For Tyler Kolek, or it could be an advantage for Tyler Kolek
Bingo.
because if he becomes a restricted free agent when that expansion draft is, they can pull him as a restricted free agent and make him a free agent. And perhaps he can go to the Knicks, say, a year early and say, hey, I want my extension a year early. And you probably wouldn't make it too small because if it's too small, it becomes very attractive to an expansion team. So like I think there are going to be some people who are going to benefit from the expansion that probably wouldn't benefit if the expansion wasn't happening.
I also think that players that are either young and looking to get their name recognition in the NBA landscape, or players that have certain metrics and awards baked into their contract where they get bonuses for hitting those awards, are going to look at this opportunity to win the most improved player award. It works in the NBA's favor to award that to an expansion team because then it kind of gives some credence to the opportunity that an expansion team gives young players who might have been buried at the end of the bench, but it also gives instant recognition to that team who wins it. It's a damn expansion team, first year, Ty Jerome, most improved player. Why would that not benefit both the franchise, the league, and the player? I also looked at that reason for it to be incentivized for Tyler Kolek. When Tyler Kolek, if he was a starting point guard for an expansion team and was playing with guys like Jacob Podol, Jeremiah Grant, Avion Mitchell, and Ty Jerome, wouldn't he possibly average 8 to 10 assists in his first year? I absolutely think he could. And if he's at giving you 12 and 8 in his first year as a starter, that's most improved award criteria. He would be in the top 5 nominations, I think. I actually think he could even average more than that if he wanted to. It just depends on the right combination of players that are around him, who the head coach is, and the system fits his skill set. It's all about matching up with the right system and the right player. And if he hit that, damn it, what if it's 18 and 9? Then he might win most improved player. That's also another great marker and significance maker for an expansion team. Look, we have the most improved player in the NBA. Like we're not bottom of the barrel, as you said in the early '90s, right? Gutter basement team. We're actually competing for the 10th seed, 9th seed, and our players are winning awards.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a group of players who can really probably make their name in a new city. But I think there's also a list of players that who have long contracts currently right now who can look at this expansion as a way to get off a contract. And then since you can trade to the Las Vegas, whatever it may be, and say, hey, if you take these 2 first round picks, I hate this contract. You could take it in your draft and take this money with you. um, I'm willing to do that. And I think there's probably one or two players who I look at in that scenario to be taking an expansion. And I think Joel Embiid's horrible contract may be one of them.
Ooh, that's a super scorching hot take, brother. They would definitely make the playoffs if they got him.
So I mean, Joel Embiid, his contract kicks in this summer for like 4 more years, and you're looking at 2 years left when the expansion draft happens. I don't think he'll have much left, but it could be a way to get 2 more picks for an expansion team that knows they're going to be bad.
Here's my question for you, Fritz. What would Philly get back if they traded Joel Embiid to now? Would they have to get something back? If they left him open, I think the team would gobble him up. But if it's a trade scenario, how does Philly absorb something to a team that has no assets?
Um. So basically, the contract would come off their books, and what they would get is an exception. They could trade something back if they wanted to, like some second round picks, but they could trade it for nothing.
Wow.
So they can say, hey, which they think this scenario is, this time in expansion, there are going to be teams looking to get off players and are willing to give up picks for them to draft them.
I never thought that creatively about this scenario when I thought and I said it, when I thought of the 76ers, I thought Paul George's contract for that very reason. But Joel Embiid, that is super, super interesting. His market value would have to be nil. They would have to have no competition for his contract in order for them to even consider that. But a Joel Embiid in Las Vegas or Seattle, those owners couldn't ask for a better situation because you immediately have an all-star on your team. You have someone who can give you 25 a game, 10 and 5, and it's going to be a hot ticket.
Yeah, and also Philly, at that point, Joel Embiid would be making like 60 something million. So like Philly, you can almost get 2 high level role players. They can definitely sign another all-star. So like it squarely puts the team in Maxi's hands. And
yes,
so it may be one of the few ways they can get off Joel Embiid at this point.
Fascinating, bro. That's a fascinating idea. Are there any other players that you thought about? Like I gave you Jeremiah Grant. I think he's someone that could be used for the same reason. He's like 4 years too old for their current timeline. Is there any other highly paid player that you can think kind of a similar situation, maybe like a Zach LaVine?
I'm not sure how many years left. I think Williams on the Bulls is another player.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely another horrible contract they wish they never gave. Is another player I kind of have in that. I don't think it would be that many picks, but Williams from the Bulls is another contract that right now it's like 4 years. At that point, it'll be 2 years.
That's a very good pick, yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure between now and then, somebody's going to give someone a contract that they regret.
In my head, I'm trying to go through all the options. Like, who else would qualify for that? I didn't want to be disrespectful of Julius Randle, but he kind of popped in my head very quickly.
You know what? If Paolo doesn't get it together, Paolo could fall in there. If he doesn't get it together by then, he could be one of those names.
You would have to. I think Charlotte would have to give up a future first for him. They would have to give up. I think he, even at shooting 5% from the 3-point line, Banchero, and having a very down year, he's still worth at least 1 first, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, they're going to be. I think there's going to be a lot more fun with this expansion than in previous years, just because the climate is different. The way we look at money is different. The way we look at players is different. I think it's very imperative that whoever owns these franchises get the right general manager or get the right president. And I think there's a lot of I think a lot of teams need to fear about losing their executives. And for the Knicks, I think this is like a dream job for Brock Aller. I think Brock
Mm.
Aller, that like the way he looks at math on an expansion team, I think he could you know cut down a turnaround.
Wow, that's fascinating, man. I didn't
Yeah,
think about that. Man, I hope not. Damn.
yeah. I hope so. I'm not too, because but are there any like if you're gonna start a new franchise, is there someone for president, not necessarily a general manager? Like, is there like someone who's currently unemployed? The person that Bob Myers
Right.
is comes to mind as probably top choice if I'm an expansion,
Wow, really great question. Huh.
or even someone who's
You,
employed now.
I could see maybe someone like Troy Weaver getting another shot. He was the one that kind of started out that Detroit rebuild. He's the one that drafted Thompson, Duran, and Cade. Was pretty off. And he also hired Monty Williams and was in the GM during their terrible 3-season losing streak. Maybe he gets a second chance with the Las Vegas or Seattle Supersonics. And in terms of people being poached, maybe Jason Kidd is tired of Dallas, the ownership, the management. Maybe he wants a fresh start. I could see him potentially relocating. Or if Kawhi is out of Clipperland, Ty Lue being interested in a relocation because the Clippers don't have their draft picks. OKC owns and control of them, I think, up until 2030. So that's another option I could see wanting to get the hell out of Dodge and start fresh somewhere else.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna we're just gonna kind of go over what. So people are talking rule changes. So a lot of times when we see these proposed rule changes, they're the
Whoa.
old rules.
Oh, man.
so 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 basically these are the old rules. They may introduce new rules, but these are the old rules. So in previous draft, the first round picks could be protected. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a wrong one. Expansion rules. Protected limit. Teams could protect up to 8 players from their roster, and there's a requirement. So if you make sure if you're in a situation where hey, I want to make sure that there aren't 8 players to protect, you still need to leave at least one player exposed who is under contract for the following season. So it can't be like a free agent. So the there's no way around that. You have to either have 8 players or you have to have someone exposed. Player selection. Like we talked about, new teams may only select one player from each existing franchise. So even though somebody may have 4 or 5 players you may like, you only can pick one. Um, for free agents, as far as the expansion part, unrestricted free agents can't be selected. So in our situation this year, we know unrestricted is Mitchell Robinson. So it couldn't be a Mitchell Robinson situation where he became a free agent and hey, that's the guy I'm going to pick. And they can't pick him. They could sign him unrestricted free agent, but that's unrestricted.
But
Um,
also, this wouldn't happen this year, though, right? This would happen in like 2 or 3 seasons.
2 years from
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, just this kind of the situation. So, but the weird situation is if you're a restricted free agent, they can make you an unrestricted free agent. So if you have someone and you didn't give an extension and he's like, hey, we're restricted. A lot of teams like try to force a player to resign by you may be forced to kind of extend them early because if the expansion franchise likes that player, they can make them unrestricted. Let me see. It says expansion teams are just from history are expected to select roughly 14 to 15 players. leaving roster spots open for draft picks. Um, and and for those, I believe for the last two, um, oh, the draft order, because there are two expansion teams. So basically, one picks the other picks, one picks the other picks.
Right.
Um, Salary type. Um, so if they pick a team off your team, what you get in return is a traded player exception equal to the salary. Um, and it and let me see roster drip. Like we spoke before, you have to have one exposed, and they would. The NBA doesn't put them at just since they have no history. That first year, they're just given a pick in the draft. So it's like, hey, you'll be number 4, or hey, you'll be number 5. They're not part of the they're not part of the lottery process. So
Right.
they're not going in the ping pong balls and potentially get number 1. They're like, that's not going to happen. They're like assigned a certain number, um, and then they have to reach a certain amount of cap space in their first year. So, um, yeah. So that's what kind of the rules that we kind of have to look out for. Um, so I yeah, it looks like this is going to happen. Hmm. Do you man, I'm
Hit me.
really
You got a question for
I'm
me?
yeah, I'm just really interesting how this is gonna look. I you know what we didn't talk about is like financial part of expansion. So, um,
I have a question for you. If there's
yeah,
a player that you think is the most likely to be taken from the Knicks, who do you think it would be?
I think if the Knicks are smart, no one they don't want to be would be exposed, but anybody right now, um, probably maybe Deuce, because if they extend Deuce and it's not at a huge number, he could be like a main like like a main player for a new team.
I can't see Leon giving him up for nothing, though. They would
Yeah,
have to get something.
I think they would. It depends how they build this team out. If the Knicks are top heavy, I don't think the Knicks have anything to worry about. If the Knicks have like four $40 million players, I don't think the Knicks have anything to worry about. The things the Knicks have to worry about is if they have a lot of young players. Like if you have the Diawaras, if you have a lot
Because
of
they have to
good
eventually
young
pay
players
him.
at the same time, yeah, I think in this situation you got to make sure you pay them early.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can't pay everybody. So that's going to be the kind of the problem. Somebody might be left hanging. So yeah, I think they're going to plan accordingly. Um, but I think 2 years from now it's like an eternity in the NBA. Like, but right now I think we have to worry probably about the back of the roster more than anything. Yeah, because the it's when you choose to pay someone, are you going to pay them enough? Someone on the getting somebody on the cheap may not be may not be the way to go. So it's
It
going to be
also depends
interesting.
on how well we do in this year's postseason. Like, do we make the finals? Do we win the championship? That I think that's going to be a massive
Yeah,
decision making implement and how we move forward and how we look at someone like Deuce who will help us win this championship, or some compared to someone like Colwood who I don't think will be a part of the rotation if we would win a championship.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. So like if I think if the Knicks are still the Knicks are top heavy, they don't have anything to worry about. But if the talent is spread out, that's when you have to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. One financial thing people haven't really been thinking about is, if you're adding these two teams, they're paying the teams the amount they're gonna sell these two franchises for is insane. Like they're talking like $7 to $10 billion. The NBA is gonna sell these franchises for. Um, that money does not go to the players. That money goes straight to the owners, the current owners. So the 30 owners now, they're gonna get the windfall from that amount. So the that was all kind of like baked into that last CBA. Everybody knew this was coming. Um, it with that much money coming in, two more teams, people say, hey, that should mean that the NBA will have a lot more money to spread out to the players. Not necessarily, because these are two good cities, so they're not going to drag down the NBA. But financially, it should not make that much of a difference.
Okay. Good point.
As far as what other implications? So these NBA teams, the 30 teams, so will be getting this payment from the sale of these two franchises. Probably could get $200-300 million.
Damn.
And what I guess they're kind of encouraging the NBA is for the teams to use that money to, like, if you're going to improve your franchise, this is the time. Like, if you're going to build a new stadium, this is the time to build your new stadium, when this money is coming in. So hopefully they put it to good use. Let me see what else. So that's a lot of money. Oh, what was that?
I said, put me on that split stream with you.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Where am I?
I couldn't see myself. There we go. Let's go. And make sure y'all donate to the NBA Economy Show. The Cash App symbol is right there. Buy Fritz a coffee while he does his great homework, giving you this great content almost on a daily basis. I don't know anyone who does live more than Fritz. He cares about his audience and wants to keep them up to date with his point of view on that day's news.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that.
Also, bro, your background is incredible. The ticker, dude. When did you put that up? That's next level.
A couple weeks ago. That's something I've been working on for a while.
It's incredible. I love it, man. Well, it's legit, bro. Put me to shame.
Yeah. Oh yeah. One thing we didn't talk about, like, the facilities for the two cities. So we know we know that the Vegas, like, we've had all-star games at Vegas. We have events at Vegas. So they do have an arena, the T-Mobile Arena, the same arena that the Seattle Kraken. Oh, no, I'm sorry, T-Mobile Vegas has an arena, like an NBA-sized arena. However, the NBA wants the new owners to build a new arena, which is interesting. So this arena,
I would imagine some of the reasoning for that is so that local contractors and builders can bait some money into the push into the economy, as well as the fact that like that arena would kind of feel more like home, right? It's a newer unveiling. Hey, you did a team and you did an arena, opposed to hey, you did a team and we're going to try to find a place for my this place over here that already exists and that you know from a different context. So actually think that's good for the city. I like that idea.
Yeah, and the NBA has been working on that for a while. Like it's the reason why we had an All Star game in Vegas, even though there was no reason to have one. It's the reason why we've been having our Emirates Cup in Las Vegas. And they kind of been like throwing a bone to Las Vegas, and it's like, hey, we're gonna give you these events, but we're gonna need a new arena. So that's gonna come down the line. Um, Also, Seattle has an arena. Yeah, where the Seattle Storm play, Seattle Kraken play, and it's considered NBA ready. So they can be ready in 2 years. Um, Vegas could start at the current arena, but down the line they will want a new arena. Um, Let me see. Yeah, all right. So, and also there's been like people actually wanting that property. So the owner of the like the result resorts world, Las Vegas, casino. He has a vacant property and he's trying to sell that property, try to make the NBA arena on that property. Um, so yeah, so it looks like they're pretty set up. Is there any people have you heard down the pipeline who are looking to be owners of a NBA franchise? Um,
No, the only speculation I've heard is that Maverick Carter and LeBron James want to own the Las Vegas one, but Maverick Carter recently came out and debunked that rumor and said that he didn't know where that came from, that he has never actually considered that, much less consulted LeBron James. I do imagine LeBron would have to have some interest in a minority state. I could even see like a player conglomerate, multiple retired former superstars coming together, putting their money in, maybe even a banana boat reunion between Wade, who currently is a minority owner in the Utah Jazz, LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, maybe those guys chipping in and becoming kind of an ownership group similar to we see the cadre in Minnesota with A-Rod and some other business owners, but this one more player centric. That's the most likely scenario I like to see. And if Mark Cuban can't buy back the Mavericks, I wouldn't be surprised if he's involved in negotiations for the Las Vegas one for sure.
yeah, obviously, yeah. Like I think there's definitely going to be some NBA like minority ownership. I think we're at the point where the numbers got so crazy that an NBA player actually owning it it's just it's like the numbers just got way too big. I think
Yeah,
LeBron James was talking about, oh, he wants to own a franchise. That's when franchises were going for 2 billion. That's when you know
not 10.
10. So now like 10 now it's like, okay, you're talking about a big corporate group, and basically they'll put you out front. You're the mascot.
Yeah,
So I
like
think
A-Rod.
yeah, yeah. So I think there may be some NBA players involved, but I don't think there'll be major parts of it. Um, yeah. So in the next few days, they're gonna like vote on this. So they're gonna vote on these two cities, and then at that point, I think they're gonna probably interview owners. Uh, so basically, they're gonna be like groups are going to try to compete to buy this. I think the numbers they said should start at 7, but they think there's going to be enough competition that it should be like 10 billion that these franchises are
Damn.
going to go for. And then once those numbers go up, it affects the rest of the league. So they go up, the Knicks go up, the Lakers go up. So it's great. It's really great for the league. This expansion.
Excited for it. I mean, I think we're ready. You know, even like the really bad teams are now quickly rebuilding faster than ever. Look at how fast the Houston Rockets, Detroit Pistons. Now we're seeing teams like San Antonio Spurs and Utah Jazz. Doesn't take very long with how much talent there is in a league for a team to get back into the playoff picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so expect very excited about this expansion. Yeah, and we're very happy to have you on, Lee. Is there anything
Appreciate
else
that.
that you're working on currently?
Well, last week I had two major essays come out. The first one was a piece for The Guardian that chronicles the Detroit Pistons' rise from bottom feeder to championship contender and first in the East. That one you can find just by Googling Lee Escobedo Pistons. And I was able to kind of implement more of my creative side into that essay, framing it with the black-eyed Susan flower native to Detroit, Michigan, and how that flower represents the resiliency of the Pistons themselves. Then I had my first essay post for The Nation, America's longest-running left-wing publication. I'm not a left-wing person myself, but that is the right platform for these type of essays I'm looking to write, because they typically tap into that train of political thought into these sports and political issues. And that one is on the Steph Curry's recent investments in IDF spyware and tech that is founded by former IDF soldiers who participate in some of the most barbaric attacks on Palestinians over the last 15 years, dating back to the Obama era. And that both of those have gotten incredible traction. I've had some incredible retweets on both those stories. Obviously, Pistons Reddit found it and shared it amongst themselves because I was fairly complimentary, even though they are our biggest opponent in the East. You cannot ignore how dominant they've become in such a short time.
Yeah, yeah. So we're working on big things. Yeah, always can see Lee on the Nick of Time show. Where I'm usually over there as the moderator.
Yeah,
So we actually have a game tonight, hopefully.
that's
Um,
my game.
so, yeah, so hopefully, see you there. Are there any like socials? Anybody can follow you?
Yeah, man. Bring the smoke if you want to debate, argue, or just have a fun time with some memes and jokes on Twitter at underscore Lee Escobedo, LeeEscobedo, or just Google Lee Escobedo NBA, and most of my articles will pop up.
All right, absolutely. You can find me Fritz handles on Twitter. NBA Economy Show on YouTube. Hopefully, you enjoyed your time. Just give a like. Likes are free. And if you want to support, of course, we do have the Cash App. But likes is a great way to support.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I have for today. Actually, I do have another show tomorrow, and we're going to be kind of going over the NCAA tournament, players to watch, with my friend John Foreman. And we're going to kind of even look at like players the Knicks should be watching during the tournament. So
Love that.
looking forward to that tomorrow, 3:10 p.m. Hopefully you guys can join for that. That's all I have for now, and I will catch you next time on the NBA Economy Show.